Let's get to the NBA. So a couple of mock drafts coming out this past week. ESPN's mock draft has the Spurs taking Stephon Castle, the UConn product, at number 4, and Tidjane Saloon. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that name until draft day. I'm sorry. It's the French power forward at number 8. CBS has them taking Nikola Topic at 4, and then the Providence guard, Devin Carter, at 8. There's a lot. You're going to see, I feel like people who don't pay attention to the draft that much, especially this year, usually there's like a number 1 pick and maybe a top 3, and then a bunch of people maybe you hadn't heard of, or maybe like different selections. This year, every mock draft you see is going to be different. They're going to have a different player at 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe Alex Sarr is going to be number 1 now, but you're going to see different players in the top 10. This is a perfect example of that. There are 2 picks, 4 different players. Who do the Spurs like? That's a great freaking question, because they're never going to tell us, and we're not going to find out until that night. They can like Reed Shepherd, they could like Rob Dillingham, they could like Stephon Castle, they could like Klingon, they can like any of these guys, and we're never going to find out until the pick is suggested on number 8.
I think, at least for me personally, things have changed over time, and the last 5 or 6 years at least, the NBA treats this kind of information if you talk to scouts, or, if you used to be able to talk to scouts or front office people off to the side, they'd kind of give you the lay of the land of what things were looking like. But the NBA now treats this as proprietary information, and only their business partners, their broadcast partners are going to be or have access to this type of information. You can still talk to baseball scouts, baseball front office people behind the scenes about where they think things are going to go in a draft. Same thing with the NFL. You can still talk to agents. You can still talk to scouts. And there's a little more of a feel. So based on what I just said, I don't have any problem going into an NFL draft saying where I think, a certain guy's going to go, especially locally if I've talked to some people, because these people know. And they know because they're talking with other people too. And so you're formulating your opinion based on opinions of people that are going to be pulling the levers on these things. I personally don't have any contact right now with anybody that's looking at this draft, so I wouldn't even feel comfortable spitballing with who's going to go where and who's going to do what or any of that stuff.
Well, and there's such varying opinions on these guys too. I mean, one team loves Reed Shepherd, one team hates Reed Shepherd. One team loves Bronny James, one team hates Bronny James. You're never going to get a consensus with this draft. So I feel better about looking at this draft like, okay, what are the needs of the team? And so with the Spurs, they have 2 very clear needs that I think we have seen all year. They need somebody who can pass the ball to Victor, and they need someone who can catch a ball on the outside from Victor and shoot it and actually make the shot.
And they need some dogs. You need more dogs, right? You need guys that are just JYDs, junkyard dogs like Mario Ellie, guys that are happy for the opportunity, happy to show that they can not only play, but they're going to go out and defend somebody super hard, night in and night out, give maximum effort. That's what this team needs more of too.
I do feel comfortable also saying people that I personally want on this team. I want Reed Shepherd on this team. He can shoot the lights out, he can play good defense, and he can facilitate. Those are 3 things that this team needs. Those are 3 things that he does really well. Stephon Castle, another guy, he's a UConn guy. Didn't get as much run as he probably would have on a worse team, but obviously UConn was the best team in the country all year long. Danny Hurley possibly now going to the Lakers as well. He was one of the best players on that team, and in the NBA, if he plays point guard, he can shoot, play defense, and pass the ball as well. So those are 2 guys that I would really like to see on this team.
And I've heard a lot of people talking about now all of a sudden that this is the worst draft in years.
Yeah, that's BS.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know what to believe. I'm not getting any intel anywhere, so I'll just see what they pick, and I'm sure we'll be just fine with it.
I'll tell you who I don't want is Nikola Topic, just because of the knee injury. He already tore his ACL this past this past Europe season. So never a fan of drafting injured guys, because you never know what's going to happen at the next level as well. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you as well, the NBA for the first time ever is going to have a 2-day draft. They're going to have first round, second round, aired in 2 days. Do you think, first of all, what do you think of that? And second of all, do you think that's because Bronny James is going to be drafted day 2, most likely.
Oh, well, I hadn't thought of that. Maybe.
That's
fair.
That's my theory, is that they're basically making this a 2-day thing. They want to test the success of it, because obviously the NFL has had unmitigated success, unparalleled success in a 3-day draft. And by moving it around to different cities and all that stuff, one of the genius moves from the NFL. The NBA now still doing it in Brooklyn, doing it 2 nights. But I really think that they're doing that because of the Bronny factor.
If you're spitballing, I could be down with that.
I think that's obviously it's my opinion, so I think it's smart. But but I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, there's only a certain few teams that are interested in Bronny James, or that Bronny is even interested in going to. I think he only accepted invitations from 2 teams out of 10. And it's like, why else would they do it besides trying to test if it's good? I mean, if it works, if you're going to get viewership, ESPN would be stupid not to air it on that second day. But what I don't get is, like, the second round of the NBA draft is not like the second round in the NFL draft.
No, because contracts aren't guarantteed, right? I don't know if that's still the case.
Contracts are guaranteed in the NBA.
Not in the second round, though.
Oh, right.
No.
Right.
So, at least unless they've changed it, and again, maybe they have. I really haven't been paying that much attention to it. But, I think maybe, too, it could be a chance to celebrate first-round guys a little more than they do. Maybe. Because once they get going, it's pretty rapid fire. But, again, I think if you're an NBA fan and you have a team that has a pretty high draft pick, you're probably going to tune in. And then if this is one of those sports that, maybe you're a fan of the team, but, you'll be perfectly fine at looking at X, later in the night to see who got what, but I can see a reason for stretching it out, especially this time of year where there's really not a lot on TV anyway, sports related.
I get that for sure. And that'll be after the Stanley Cup. That'll be after the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a lot on TV, so I could see them grasping at viewership late in June. Let's talk about the NBA Finals real quick. So NBA Finals starting tonight. Celtics, Mavs. The Mavs have probably, I would say this is a stretch. They have 2 of the best 3 players in the series, I think. 4th one would be Jaylen Brown, but I think Luka's the best player in the series. I think Jason Tatum's the second best. You could make an argument Kyrie Irving is the second best. You could make a very strong argument that the Mavs have the 2 best players on the either roster, but then you could make another argument that the Celtics have the next 6. How do you see the series, and how do you see the matchups and all that stuff?
I don't know. I said at the beginning of all the playoffs, ABD, anybody but Dallas. Normally my default is, like, if it's a Texas team, right? Oh, you're pulling for the Texas team. But there's just something about the logo that, and all those bitter rivalries with the Spurs through the years, through the decades. Anybody but Dallas, of course they're in the finals. So you may as well run to Vegas right now and bet on the Mavericks. But, it looks like
a lot of people have.
Yeah. The hot streak that they're on in terms of who they've had to beat to get here, where they've come seeding-wise to get here, the fact that, I don't know, you could say no, everything's setting up for Boston. It's just, I don't like the fact that I said at the beginning of all this, anybody but Dallas, and here they are in the finals. So.
Well, here's the thing for me. It's like, I think if Dallas loses a close series, let's say it's 4-2 and the Celtics win, I think it's still a successful season for Dallas. If the Celtics don't win the finals, it's a failure of a season for the Celtics, just because they've had the easiest path to get there. Everybody in the East got hurt. Donovan Mitchell got hurt. Jimmy Butler got hurt. Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. Even though Kristaps went down, it's not like you lost Jason Tatum. It's like every single thing has broken their way. Yes, they have been a dominant team throughout the entire regular season. They've been dominant throughout the postseason, albeit with the injuries to their opponents. I think if they don't win a championship with this team in this layout against this team, it's a failure of a season, and I have no problem with saying that, and I'll say it to the end.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago, and I think you're right. From where they've come from, and, basically because the hard work was done years ago, building the roster and assembling all that, how they've evolved, I would think that, losing at this level is going to feel like a failure, not only for that team, but for that fan base, too, on a lot of levels.
So do you think, I know you said anybody but Dallas, should, and the Celtics have Derek White, who's a former Spur. Should Spurs fans root for Dallas because, well,
I wouldn't.
Texas, or should they root for the Celtics?
So if I'm a Spurs fan, there's just no way I could put my feelings aside for the rivalry. And it's kind of like, would A&M fans be pulling for Texas in a national championship setting just because it's Texas? I don't think so. And vice versa. I don't think Texas fans would be pulling for A&M. Like, you think Texas fans are going to be pulling for A&M if they get to the College World Series? I don't think so. So that's where I'm going. I'm allowing my hate to take precedence here.
I'm rooting for,
and I have no reason to hate these guys.
Right.
How can you not like Kyrie? How can you not like
Luka.
some of these guys? Yeah, Luka, the rest of these guys on the roster. I mean, there's no reason for me to hate them other than the logo.
I did a monologue
But that's enough.
A couple of weeks ago on Bryson DeChambeau and how he's reinvented his image. I think Kyrie Irving's reinvention of his own image has been like bordering on heroic the way he's done it. Like during COVID, he was at his all-time low. He wasn't getting a vaccine. He wasn't doing all these things. He was, I mean, and
yeah, that's right.
Not to say anything about vaccines,
right? But how he was treated
how
through
he was
all that,
treated through
publicly.
all of it,
yeah.
and through how he was. People were saying he was riding Kevin Durant's coattails, and the way that he left Boston was bad, and just all those things piled up to where you thought that Kyrie was the problem. To where the point last year when the Mavs traded for Kyrie, everyone was like, "Oh, this isn't going to work," and then it was a disastrous failure in the first season. The way that he's come back this year and treated everything and been had some humility and been humble, I think that his reinvention of his own image has been spectacular to the point where I think some of this stuff is I think people are actually rooting for Kyrie, which is something that we aren't really accustomed to.